So we're going to have a look through the music video Formation by Beyoncé. Now in the exam this is divided into two different areas. Firstly, the media language. These are things like cinematography, shot types, editing, mise-en-scène. You could be asked a question about representation, about how Beyoncé represents particular current events through her music video, about how she communicates these social and political issues through the situations and the scenarios that she uses. We're also going to have a think about how theory applies to this music video, so namely semiotics. In other words, what are the signs, what's the iconography, what can we see, and what does this suggest to us? Okay, as the audience, what connotations does this have? We'll also look at feminism, Van Zunen, bell hooks, and what they have to say about formation and what they have to say about Beyoncé as an artist. And lastly, we'll look at ethnicity, post-colonialism and Gilroy, and what he has to say about how the media treats people of other ethnicities. Obviously in there as well is postmodernism. That is a thread that runs throughout this video. It's really it's a scary concept. It's one that perhaps we avoid talking about because we don't really understand what is meant by postmodernism, but quite simply in this video there is a simulation of events. It's not the actual event, it's not the news reporting on things that are happening, it's Beyoncé simulating the circumstances, okay, making a representation of particular places and particular communities and particular historical events. So let's talk through this one step at a time and see if we can break down some of the themes and some of the ideas in formation. Now the first thing to say about this is that the context, 2016, so after Hurricane Katrina. Now Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans. New Orleans is a particularly black dominated area in America. It was argued at the time by the black community that actually they had been largely neglected by the politicians, by the police, by other people, that if they were a largely white community, it's probable they would have been helped out to a larger extent. So to set this music video in what is simulated to be New Orleans is quite provocative. You have Beyoncé herself standing on a police car that is sinking underneath the water. It actually starts off with the words, what happened in New Orleans. So it opens up, it makes no pretense about where this video is set and what issues this video is dealing with. And actually the sinking of the police car kind of symbolises the fact that the police just didn't want to know. So just to sort of unpick this in a little bit more detail, we know it's in New Orleans. The style of music is this kind of bounce style that sort of began in this particular area of America, and it's very deliberately so. And if you think back to that documentary we watched about bounce music and the origins of bounce music, you can see that this is placing the video in this particular area. Even further back than this, you'll remember us talking about the Rodney King trial. This was in 1991. This was the first instance where a black man in America was pulled over by the police and beaten. Well, it wasn't the first instance where that happened, but it was the first instance of it being filmed on a camcorder. If you remember the story, the police, it went to trial and the police were found not guilty, regardless of Rodney King's injuries, regardless of his testimony, regardless of the testimony of witnesses. And just to bring that into a more modern context, which is what Beyoncé does all the way through this video, The CCTV imagery that we can see in formation shows us that that still happens. It's almost commenting on the fact that this is picked up in the media, this is picked up by people, but still there's injustice, still it's ignored, still it's sort of swept under the carpet. And we've looked at particular instances where this has happened. Now, if you cast your mind back to looking at thinking about the Black Lives Matter movement, this is something that started on Twitter. This is something that started after an instance of police brutality that was particularly bad, that was so bad that it resulted in the death of an 18-year-old young black male. Somebody was so angry that they decided to air their views on Twitter with the hashtag Black Lives Matter, and it went viral. And it began this conversation and opened this conversation. Now, Beyonce shows this in the video with the image of a small boy dancing in front of many riot police. Now, this is a really, really powerful image because, as you can see, this is a boy no older than perhaps 11 or 12. These are police who look as though, you know, they could do some serious damage. It's showing the inequality, it's showing the idea of police brutality and the idea that this still happens in today's society. This is quite a big, bold political statement to be made by Beyonce. If we move even further back in history than the Black Lives Matter movement, we've got images of slavery. We've got particularly poignant images of black women who have put themselves in the place of who would have been the white slave masters' wives. Sitting, fanning themselves, sitting in these kind of elaborate gowns. The role reversal really kind of speaks volumes about what would happen if. Why is there inequality? What is it that makes one group think that they're better than the other? It's like Beyonce has gone on a bit of an exploration through history to ask these questions and to open these questions. And in addition to that, she's used her own child in the video to highlight this innocence, this sort of childlike idea that why should there be race? Children don't see race. So there's some quite complex stuff going on here. Now, Beyonce herself, she has placed herself at the forefront of the Black Lives Matter campaign. She's put herself as an advocate for the Black Lives Matter campaign. And if I can cast your mind back to her appearance at the Super Bowl, now you'll remember that she showed up in Black Panther attire with the beret and sort of full Black Panther dress, saluting as she walked on stage. Now, the Super Bowl itself has the biggest acts and attracts the largest audiences, and she knew that this would have the biggest impact. As an activist for the Black Lives Matter movement, Beyonce has put herself out there, has put herself out as perhaps the subject of criticism from various people. And I think we remember Bell Hooks' quote that she is in fact an anti-feminist terrorist. What Bell Hooks means by that is that she's calling herself a feminist, but she's dressing seductively. She is actually, in Bell Hooks' mind, making a mockery of things like slavery by dressing the way that she does and dancing the way that she does. She's sending mixed messages. Now, Van Zunen, on the other hand, would probably commend Beyonce as a political activist, as somebody, as a woman sharing her views, as a powerful woman in the media today. So if we take apart some of the imagery, some of the signs and signifiers in the video, things like houses flooding, that's supposed to simulate the reality of Hurricane Katrina. We looked at an actual picture of this earlier. Now, this is what Beyonce uses to represent this event, linking to postmodernism. You've got the line of dancers that's supposed to give us the impression of perhaps an army, training army, the Black Panther movement. You've got the image of Beyonce outside of the slave owner's house, being proud of her heritage and the bounce movement and the New Orleans dance style. So other theories and other things that we can apply to formation. These include things like Henry Jenkins and convergence, because the story of Black Lives Matter is actually extended through this music video. Perhaps people who haven't seen these kind of scenarios in the news before, perhaps people who haven't really thought particularly hard about historical events such as slavery, will be exposed to these events and will subsequently share these online. Looking at the music video, looking at how many views that it has to date will help you in the exam, because you can be quite specific and quite factual with your answers. How many times has it been shared, for example? The other theory that you can apply to do with new and digital media is obviously Clay Shirky's end of audience theory. It's about the consumer becoming the prosumer. Perhaps in this case it's Beyoncé being the consumer of the news, being the consumer of events, being the consumer of the Twitter conversation that is happening, and becoming herself a prosumer for these events, becoming herself somebody who feels compelled to share this message with her many fans. Now, having said that, it's really interesting that she's using this music video as a platform to air these particular views. Puts a bit of a different spin on what the purpose of a music video is. We maybe think of music videos as having very little relevance politically. Maybe we think that they shouldn't be used as a tool for social commentary. It's really clear that Beyoncé has used the ideas and the concepts and current events in this music video to get people to talk, to get audiences to start communicating and sharing about these issues that are going on in society. So have a look at some of the wider debates to do with Black Lives Matter. Have a look at some of the events that have been simulated in this music video. Have a think about some of the symbolism in the mise-en-scène. Have a think about the powerful imagery of the sinking police car, of the little boy dancing in front of the riot police, of the formation of the Black Panther cadets. Have a think about the imagery that goes even further back historically of the slave owner's mansion and the inhabitants being replaced by black representatives. Once you start to unpick these themes and these ideas and look into them for yourself, they become a point of conversation, and it's where this video becomes quite powerful. We haven't even really spoken about the lyrics, but the one that really stands out for me is the Black Bill Gates in the making. Now, what is Beyoncé trying to say about that? Is it that she's trying to say she wants to be a rich, powerful white man? Or is it that she's trying to say, is it possible for somebody of black ethnicity to be as powerful as somebody like Bill Gates, who is the richest man in the world? So it's opening these questions. I think what this music video is doing through its mise-en-scène, through its symbolism, through its discussion, is opening these questions, opening the conversation. And not everybody likes this conversation to be open. That's why she has faced this criticism. Again, I would encourage you to have a look at some of the responses from her performance at the Super Bowl. I would encourage you to have a look at some of the ideas that have come about as a result of the entire album, Lemonade. Dig deeper into these issues, dig deeper into the criticism and the commendations about this music video, but I hope that this brief summary has been helpful.